Good morning and welcome to my social media post. It's Georgie here, and I would like to touch base with you today on how abuse affected me in the start of a relationship and how I was so blinded by it and so in love that I didn't want to see what was happening to me. It started off, I met this guy on one of the dating apps because I had kids. I never managed to get out. I never managed to do a lot of things. So I started talking to somebody on Facebook, somebody I knew from I was in my teenager years, sort of an ex-boyfriend from when I was 15. Anyway, as we got closer and closer, I'd found out that certain events in his life had happened not so long before we had met. So things were taken very, very slowly. And I understood the journey that he was travelling on himself. But anyway, it wasn't long into the relationship, maybe a couple of weeks, a month, and he got stressed one day and held me by the throat in the hallway of his house with a knife in his hand. I was absolutely petrified of what was going to happen next. But at the same time, I was trying to justify his actions and, try and understand where he was coming from. Had I done something wrong? Had I said something which was maybe a trigger from his past relationship? I don't know, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt and, said, okay, just make sure it doesn't happen again. I understand, I'm here for you. You want to talk, you know where I am. So I left the house that day and he rang me up and apologised and says, look, sorry, he doesn't know what came over him, that he was falling in love with me and he didn't want that to put me off him, which was grand, I understood that. I understood where he was coming from. But as time went on, there was more and more signs that I couldn't see, that were happening right in front of me. He would try and hack into all my emails. He would go onto my laptop. I had training courses, and he would ring me. Like, I had a training course just outside Dublin. And from the moment I left to the moment I came home, he was on the phone, text messages. I was meant to be staying there the night, travelling, a good couple of 100 miles round trip. It would have been. So, at night time, the first night I stayed, and I got so many text messages, who you seeing, who you sleeping with. I sure you just want to get in with the boss and all that lot. And, he couldn't have been further from the truth. I was there to focus and study and plan for the next day. All my work that needed to be done. But he had kept me awake that much. The next night I decided to go home and commute. And that carried on for 2 days. I was totally exhausted. But I still got the abuse. I may as well just have stayed, at the hotel and just took what was coming. Anyway, once again, I just ignored that. At the time, I just thought it was because he was caring and he was loving and he wanted to be with me, and he didn't like me being away. Sorry, here's my morning coffee. And, that carried on. I had a great job. I enjoyed my work. But it was the odd comment, the odd snide joke, about customers coming in. Was I flirting with them? No, I was in retail. You don't flirt, but you got to have the gift of the gab. Anyway, I ignored all that. He asked me to marry him, so I said yes. And me and my kids moved in with him. Now, yes, I was blessed. I felt the luckiest girl in the world, someone who loved me and loved my kids and loved me for who I was. I was over the moon after thinking, one failed marriage, I'll never find someone again who would be there for me. But, I love this guy, he had a heart, and on his good days, he was fantastic. Anyway, there were certain times and events that we were together that just got harder and harder. I changed jobs. I was doing like 70 hours a week to try and bring in an income. And he would ring me at work yet again. or come down to work, hover about to see who I was on with, and then say he wanted me to pull a sickie and come home. Now, obviously, work doesn't, you can't do that, especially in retail. There's no chance. I was in a fast paced, moving environment that needed hands on management all day. Anyway, I sort of stuck by that. Thinking back, even at the beginning, he would pull me down in what he said, but then straight after he would try and lift me a wee bit, and then he didn't understand why I wasn't overly friendly after the insults, because they did hurt, and like you said, it was apology after apology, and he won't be like that again. I'm sorry he hurt me, mentally, not physically. Physical stuff hadn't started by this time, the name calling, the bitching, that I should be so lucky, to have someone like him. And I actually believed that, I believed everything, and like I said, because I was on my own with 4 kids, somebody wanted me for me, and, I should be in cloud 9, but I wasn't. But still, this kept chipping away. The name calling got worse and worse. The kids didn't hear any of this at the time. And I sort of got to the stage where name calling didn't even matter to me anymore. The damage had already been done, but I just ignored him, and I didn't respond, and I didn't say, stop calling me that. I just thought, whatever, And because I had got to that stage, it was almost as if his controlling had to step up, because what he was doing was no longer working. Excuse me. So that's when the abuse started. He would smash things. And don't get me wrong, he would throw something at me and I would just drop a plate. I'd smash a plate on the floor and say, if you can do it, I can do it too. I was never physical towards him. If anything, I was the opposite. But it was Friday nights that I dreaded more than anything. When he would drink, it just seemed to escalate so much more. And I would sit and just think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen tonight? I didn't see it as abuse. I just saw it as someone's had a few drinks, someone's going to get more verbal, someone's going to get more physical. Just stay away, avoid it. At the end of the day, when he's not like that, he's lovely. When he's not angry, when he's not controlling, he was the sweetest man ever. I wouldn't have married him otherwise. But, every Friday night I just thought, oh no, what way is this going to go? And I'll never forget, there was this one night that I just knew he wasn't in good mood. I had worked 60-hour week. I was absolutely shattered, on my feet all day. And I thought, right, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm not going to sit down and watch TV while he drinks. So I took myself up to bed. Oh my goodness, that was the worst thing I could have done. I went upstairs and I just laid on the bed and just sat, thinking to myself, why is he like this? Why does he drink? Why does he need to drink? We've all gone through stuff in our life that we need to cope with and handle. There's counsellors out for that. He could have talked to me, he could have, whatever. But this one particular time, he didn't like the fact that I was upstairs. He came running upstairs. Now my kids were in the rooms with the doors shut, and he started shouting at me. Now, I had an issue with my body, and the way I looked. And looking back now, it was because how he had made me feel. So when it came to taking my clothes off, I did it when nobody else was around. I put my jammies on, or, I got dressed, but I got dressed when I was on my own. But this time I was just lying in bed with my normal clothes, and he came in and said, why are you not changed? Why are you not ready? I said, I will. I said, I'm just lying up here, I've got a bit of a sore head, leave me alone. Oh my goodness, that was red rag to a bull. So what he did was, I was lying in the bed, he grabbed my feet, and he started pulling off my leggings and pulling down, my underwear. I still have my top on, thank goodness. But I started, get off me, would you leave me alone, would you get off me? And I obviously got louder and louder. And before I knew it, the kids were stood at the door. Now, I wasn't aware of this at the time this was happening. And I managed to push him off. So what he did then was stride across me on the bed, across my middle. In a rage, he lifted the bed head off the back of the bed and placed it across my chest. So not only I couldn't breathe, I also didn't have movements to fight him off, to push him away. But he sat on my thighs, so I couldn't move my legs to kick him off. And he pushed down hard on the bed head. And all I had was literally the tip of my fingers, trying to keep him away, And he kept headbutting me. But looking back, it was because you couldn't see the bruises then. Do you know what I mean? Excuse me. And I managed, as he was headbutting me, I managed to get, my fingernails and try and get him away. I actually dug him in the head just to try and get him to stop it. And I would do anything to get this blimmin' headboard off my chest. I couldn't breathe. I was really struggling. Then the kids started screaming, "Get off, Mum, get off, Mum. Why are you doing this? Get off her, get off her." And he didn't. And he still sat there. And I actually thought I was going to pass out because I couldn't breathe. Eventually, he got off, stomped out the bedroom door, pushed the kids into their room, slammed the door, and went downstairs. And even then, I still made excuses for him and his behaviour. And I must have said something. I must have pushed him to the limit. I should have just sat down with him. I should have just watched TV. But then why should I? I tried to avoid all confrontation, which took myself upstairs in the first place. Events happened like this on a weekly basis, and I was still in this bubble. I didn't want another failed marriage. I had one failed marriage already, and the last thing I wanted was a second. And I believe, okay, we have to work at this. We have to find out, we have to find out why he's being like this. Am I a trigger? But even looking back now to this day, I don't think it was anything. I don't think I could have done any more than what I did to try and keep the peace. I cooked all the meals when I was working. I froze them, so all they had to do was take them out. I tidied the house on my days off, or, in the morning if I was working sort of a late shift. I wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, and some days I gave it off back. I never raised my hand to him. But I would shout at him and say, "Would you just leave me alone? I don't deserve this. I'm not your piece of meat." But there was other events, other times, which was so hurtful. And it was the more that he said, I could handle the physical side almost, because once he had hit me or dragged me or stripped me or whatever, that was over and done with. It was the mental abuse that I received from him, pulling me to pieces. "Oh, you're fat, you're ugly, nobody would want you. How can you be trusted? How can you do this?" I had never been unfaithful in my life, And as hurtful as it is even to think about it, I've had to go through it and deal with it myself. There was times that he used to chase me up to the bedroom, that I would get in there first. I would lock the door, and he was not going to give in until he got into the room. So there was many a time I had to climb out the skylight and sit on the roof and just pray he'd go away. Or he tried to get up on the skylight, chase me, and I came in through my daughter's skylight, down the stairs, and went out. Looking back now, how I even left the kids with him, I don't know. And it seems to be a common occurrence, that whole relationship. I'd have my kids with him. There was a day, God, I'll never forget, there was a day, now my son was never, ever, ever sick for school. He worked really hard, loved school, great friends. And this one morning, I had to leave for work at 8 o'clock. And I'll never forget it. And my son says, "Mum, I feel sick, I don't want to go to school." And I said, right, okay, that's no problem. If you don't want to go and you really don't feel well, just stay at home. But I had missed hundreds of phone calls during work that day, and I couldn't have the phone on me, so, there's nothing I could have done about it. But my children have been trying to ring me, especially my son. And when I got home, I had found out that he had pulled my son off the top bunk of the bed. He was sick all over the floor on like a car mat, so thank goodness it saved the carpet, or that would have been another hellhole. He had his boxer shorts on. He says, "No, you're going to school." So he literally picked up his school bag. Bearing in mind my son was wearing his boxer shorts, he lifted up his school bag and shoved him outside. He wouldn't let him in. And what I had found out, and I'm totally disgusted and shocked by, that, excuse me for that, it was the whole day he'd spent outside, and he had to get shelter from the cold underneath the caravan with his school bag over the top of him. My husband was very clever. He had let him in just before the rest came home from school. So my son was in bed, trying to get some heat and still feeling ill. I'm surprised he didn't get hypothermia. But, that was just one example of abuse that had gone on. There was times that he had beaten my daughter with a hockey stick. He would chase my daughter around the house with an aerosol and a lighter. He let on that it was all for fun, but she was petrified of fire and flames and anything to do with that. I mean, petrified. She wouldn't even plug in plugs because he had made out to her that if she did that, it would go on fire. So for many, many years, we had issues there of her just plugging things in, taking things out, asking us to do that for her. But anyway, he would get this aerosol can and spray it and then light the lighter or match or whatever he had in his hand, and it would cause that big, she would scream. She was petrified. She would run up, I remember the squeals. It wasn't put on, it wasn't for attention, and it definitely wasn't a game that was played, Then there was times that he locked my youngest son in the cupboard under the stairs when I was at work also, because I would never tolerate that. My kids were everything to me. And he was petrified of the dark. He would stand by the door and wouldn't let him out, and he was sat in there sobbing. Things like that went on behind closed doors, which I never knew happened until after I left. After I left him, I used to go to my friend's house and we'd sit, and I couldn't sit at peace. I thought, God, no, I have to be at home before he gets up. I've got to have his dinner ready. And it was that type of anxiety that ruined my life, and I think that was the start of my agoraphobia. Looking back, it's so painful. Looking back, I feel so stupid because I couldn't see what was happening. He had alienated me from my friends. My friends weren't allowed to come. I wasn't allowed any. He made the relationship with my parents non-existent because I wasn't allowed to go and see them. Why would I want to go and see him when I'm married to him? Why would I want to go anywhere else? But yet he could come and go as he pleases to his own family and his parents and whatnot. But he had alienated all that, so that I couldn't go, and I was making excuses for not going, helping them, giving them a hand. So at the time I hadn't even realised that was happening. I was left, I was a wife with kids, who no longer had friends, bar one, that he just couldn't destroy that relationship with. Oh, trust me, he tried. Once I left him, he went round to her house and said that I said that, I never saw her as a friend, or I never liked her. She was my best friend. She supported me through everything. I helped her when she was going through divorce with her husband, and her husband's, her and her husband split up. She was my rock. Why would I ever say a bad word about her? you know. I'm just lucky that his word of doubt in her head didn't didn't take over her thoughts, you know, and she had to take my word for it. But she knew that, you know, there was times I wasn't myself, times I had to ring in sick from work because the amount of beatings around my head, that I had constant headaches and migraines, and I was making excuses. Oh, it's just a migraine. I get these. I suffer from these. You know, I couldn't go to the doctor and say, oh, this is what's happening. At the time, I had no scars. It was all, you know, all of my, you know, all abuse to my head, you know. But there, you know, sort of when time was coming to an end, there was times that he would just thump and thump and thump at the top of my arms. So I couldn't fight back. I couldn't push him off, you know. I had dead arms. I couldn't move, you know, and he saw this was great because I couldn't push him away. I had to just take what was coming to me. You know, yes, all couples have arguments. You know, all couples just want to take themselves off and say it's finished and whatnot. You know, and when it came to the abuse of my children, I honestly, truly didn't see it until I left. And it was only when the police and the social workers came out to the house to get statements off us all, I just said to the kids, be open, be honest. I wasn't there all the time. Nothing will shock me. There's me thinking there wasn't much for them to say, you know. But nothing would shock me. And the stuff that they came out with of how they were treated, I just sat and I sobbed and I thought, how could I be so blinded to see this? How could I think there was no way out? You know, why couldn't I just get up and leave? You know, I guess I was just trying to prove to my parents, trying to prove everybody around me that I was happy behind closed doors. You know, I was smiley, I always had my makeup on. Nobody would have known any different, you know, and I didn't want that to fail, you know. The house wasn't mine, it was his house when we got married, so I knew that if I was leaving with nothing. But there was times that we would go away in the caravan and his parents would go away at the same time and park just in front of us. And then kids went to bed, out came the bottle of wine, or whatever he was drinking at the time. It wasn't just one bottle, it was like 2 or 3. You couldn't just have one glass of wine or one beer and leave it at that. Whereas I could, no problem. I didn't care if I had a drink. I actually think I drank less in the relationship with him than I did any other time, you know. But it was when his parents saw how he was treating me, and you know, they saw eventually, you know, I was getting bruises on my arms. They saw the bruises. You know, the first time they told him not to do it again, didn't speak to him for a couple of weeks. But then it was happening more and more, and they ignored it. You know, they actually denied it. You know, this would be scandal to their family that this Christian only child who could do no wrong could do this to somebody in a family, you know, someone especially who he loved. So I blame them for a lot of it. You know, I know if that was my child abusing their partners, I would carry them to the police myself, you know. But I know that my kids would never do that for what they've seen and what they've been through. But I certainly wouldn't tolerate it as a parent. And I would make sure it would be nipped, you know, on the bud if it did happen. But I couldn't understand why they wouldn't accept this is the way I was being treated, you know. It was all my fault, you know. He had filled them with the cock and bull stories all the time. Oh, I did this, I did that, you know. And he knew what he was doing. He was letting on that I was this, you know, bad person. But then that's because he knew of the way he was treating me. So if he could badmouth me before the truth came out, then he could almost justify himself, you know. He'd already made the excuses before they even happened. But it was this one New Year's Eve, which was the night, even though it was the hardest hiding, battering I had ever got. of him, I actually thought I was going to die. And I actually think he scared himself. You know, he took himself to his mum's. And I sat there and I thought, I can't take this anymore. You know, that was my boiling point, you know. I just thought, no, you know, I don't deserve this. No matter, you know, I would never hurt my kids. And I love them. So why is he doing that to me and my kids? You know, there's no love there. You know, I might have convinced myself at the beginning that's the way it was going to be. But anyway, he took himself to his mum's house and something just clicked. I just thought, no. I rang the police. I told them what had happened. I told them I couldn't move my arm. I was lying on the bed. They came around and took a statement. They took pictures a few days later. I got an injunction that next morning, so he couldn't come back to the house, which gave me the chance to get pretty much a bin bag each for the kids with their favourite toy and sort of a week's worth of clothes. I got a friend to come and collect me because I had no car. He had taken that away. I had no car, I had nothing, I had no transport. And I think that was a way of him controlling me. So I couldn't leave even if I wanted to. But this time, you know, I had no money, I had nothing, and I thought, I don't care. So I was very, very lucky, you know, that it was the next day was Monday, and I went down to Women's Aid. I got them on side. I went through what had happened, and obviously, you know, they helped us find accommodation. And then we were so lucky, we fell on our feet. There was a landlord who saw that I was distressed with 4 children, and he had a house that was vacant. I had no deposit, I had no advance rent, nothing. But I told him that, you know, I will be getting my rent paid, you know, I will be on the benefits, I no longer can work. So he took me at face value and he let us move in. Now, I had no furniture, I had nothing, you know. We had the covers and pillows, so, you know, we made do on the floor. There was somebody else that I knew that could help us out with beds eventually. Women's Aid contacted Sir Vincent de Paul. They stepped in, got us a cooker, got us the essentials we needed, you know, and I felt blessed. They supplied us with food for 8 weeks, because that's how long back then it took to get a claim for money, for benefits to come through. I'm just so glad it was after Christmas, not before, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, there is help out there. But the first thing you've got to do is realise that it's not normal what you're going through. You know, yes, you want to feel sorry for them, you know, you don't want to face it. You think there's no way out. There's avenues you can take. I know that they strip you down. The abuser strips you of all self-confidence, all self-worth, everything. And it's so hard to see your life away from what you've been used to. You know, I stuck it for 4 years, 4.5 years, and it was 4.5 years too long. I should have seen the signs at the very beginning. That one time he held me by the throat in the hall with a knife. I should have walked away then, and I didn't, because I wanted to see the best in everybody, and I did that with him, you know. But there are ways out. There's people out there who can help. You know, if anyone's in that situation and you don't know how to cope and you're watching me now, drop me a message. You know, I can help. I can put you in touch with telephone numbers that, you know, for support for you, Women's Aid, you name it. You know, you can get away. Don't settle for anything less. For any man that can call you names or raise his hand to you isn't worth your love, you know. And it's important that friends are around, family. Don't let anybody alienate you from anything. If someone loves you, they'll appreciate your friends, your freedom, They'll let you go. You know, you can't keep a lion in a cage, because he's going to do what he will to try and get out, you know. So you live your life, and if you see controlling things starting to happen, go talk to somebody, even go to your doctor. You know, they're there to help as well. That's one thing I didn't do, and I wish I had done. But then again, I didn't want to admit that my life had got to the stage of, I went from being very independent, very self confident, to being a whimpering mess, And yes, it took me a long time to get over. It took me about, 9 years. I don't think I'll ever get over it. The scars are always there. The scars are up here in my head, and I have to deal with them every single day. And I don't care whether he's going around telling people that that wasn't the case. This never happened. It was all me. At the beginning, I was believing that. Now, it wasn't me. The issue was with him, and I pity him. If there's one thing that I have done, I have saved him from doing it to any other woman. Because the moment he lifts his hand, the police get involved and they open up the cases. Now, my case never got to court because the PPS turned around and said they couldn't guarantee a conviction, so they weren't taking it any further. That doesn't mean to say it didn't happen. It was that they didn't have enough evidence to produce at the court. That's mainly my fault, apart from my best friend who clicked on at the end what was happening. I hadn't told anybody else. I had bruises in the end, all the bruises are around the head. I didn't go to anybody else, so they didn't have a case. And it certainly didn't make him innocent. The kids, when that verdict came back that they weren't going to court, I felt let down and betrayed by the system that I thought was there to help. My kids felt let down. After months and months of video evidence, interviews, you name it, they thought that, yes, he was going to be locked away. There was no tormenting them anymore. But it didn't happen. And even when I left him, he would follow my daughter around after school, just to torment her, to get inside her head. Now, she was only 11, and she would run in the shop to hide. When she came out, he was still sat there. She was that scared. One day, she even ran up to the police station, and they said because he actually hadn't done anything, there was nothing they could do. I was absolutely furious. He would drive round, he'd find out where we lived, but it wouldn't be hard. He just had to follow us after school one day to see, where we went home. He knew what he was doing. But he used to sit outside our house and just sit there, just watch the house, and that would scare me, that would freak me out. But he knew, unless he actually did something, there was nothing the police could do. But, the amount of phone calls I made to the police, they actually went round and I think gave them a warning that if this doesn't stop, then they will take it further. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm now sitting here with a beautiful new husband, which I thought would never happen. Kids that have turned out amazing. I couldn't be more proud of them than I am. They're all grown up now. Well, my youngest is 16, my eldest is 20 coming 27 next week. And, we've all had issues, but we've been a close family. Me and the kids have a bond that I never had with my parents, and I feel very, very lucky because of that, because I've tried to keep them grounded and stable, and like I said, now I'm with a husband, I'm with a man that wouldn't even raise his voice to me. He'd never raise his hand. He really, really loves me and my children, which I thought would never happen. Oh, and grandchildren, they call him Granda and stuff, so there is life at the end of abuse, and you don't have to suffer in silence. After every storm, there's a beautiful rainbow. Reach out and you'll find that pot of gold, Just don't think that you are stuck in a relationship like this, because you're not. You can get out. You can live your life. And I'm living proof of that. The pain is still there, yes. And the hurt is still there. And the guilt is there. That the fact that I let my kids go through what they went through. I should have maybe listened to them more. But I was working, I was trying to bring money in for the family. So I do sit with an awful lot of guilt, which never goes away. But I won't let it control me anymore. I've moved on. I'm happy. I'm the happiest I've ever been with a man that is just great, and because of that, I'm sat here today talking about what I went through because I'm strong enough. And you all are too. Don't suffer. Pick up the phone. There is somebody out there to help you. Okay? So, I know I'm waffling on a bit now, but I just keep wanting to reiterate that there is help, there's help out there. You just have to open your eyes and see you deserve so much more. Anyway, I hope you sort of listened to my story. Yes, I've cut it down to certain events. There was a lot more that happened in between the lines where abuse was concerned. But social media isn't the place for that, But anyway, I'll let you go. I'll let you think about what I've said. And if you need anything, message me. I'm always here. So thank you for watching. Take care. I love you all.